Hi, it's Amy from Cakes with Faces. Now today I thought it might be useful to go through one of my Japan trips with you so you can see the itinerary, what worked well, what I do differently, and there'll be lots of tips along the way. It'll be my 2023 trip to Tokyo, Kyoto and Osaka. Even though it's not the most recent, I thought it'd be the most useful because it's more similar to the trip most people do on the popular Golden Route. It's a 2-week trip that also includes Nagoya and an onsen stay in Kinosaki. We flew with British Airways and we were really lucky to get a good price for premium economy, which isn't luxurious, but it is more comfortable for the extremely long 14-hour flight. It was an early spring trip at the end of February, start of March, which is the very end of the off-season, just before cherry blossom season. And that was great because it meant everywhere was that little bit less busy and it was easier to book things and get reservations. Unless you really want to see the cherry blossoms, personally I'd avoid cherry blossom season, which is the end of March, start of April, because that's when everyone wants to go to Japan to see the beautiful cherry blossoms, but it does also mean it's a lot more crowded, especially the last 2 weeks of March, which are also the holidays in Japan. On this trip I was really lucky and the weather was warm and sunny, but I went at exactly the same time of year this year and it was really cold. You'll see in most of my videos I'm wearing a scarf, although I do get cold easily. So in early springtime it can go either way. This wasn't my first visit to most of these places. I've been travelling to Japan since 2010, so what we did might be different to what you do on your first time there, but I hope it'll be useful and interesting anyway. For me, it wouldn't be a trip to Japan without spending at least a few days in Tokyo, so that's where we started. We stayed at the Shibuya XL Hotel Tokyu, which is right on Shibuya Station. We were really lucky to just have a view of Shibuya crossing from our room. There's a video about it on my channel. There are videos about pretty much everything in this itinerary with more information, so instead of mentioning it constantly, I'll just put the thumbnail in the corner. If you can't find any of them, let me know in the comments and I'll give you a link. And if you have any questions, I do always try and reply to comments, even on old videos. Shibuya is a major city centre area. Personally, I'm not a massive fan of staying there because I think it feels very busy and cramped. While it is as busy as other major city centre areas, it's not as spacious. They were doing a lot of building work on Shibuya Station, which is still ongoing until 2027, which makes it a little confusing to navigate. We landed at 10:30 in the morning. I think it's a good idea to do something relaxed and low-key on your arrival day because you're not going to be full of energy after the flight. Save all the places you're really excited about for another day when you can fully enjoy them. We went to Sugamo, which isn't a major area of Tokyo and probably not something for your first trip, but it was a really good chilled thing to do on our arrival day when we weren't feeling too sharp. Sugamo is known as Grandma's Harajuku because it's so popular with old people, but it is charming and you get to stroke the fluffy butt of their duck mascot Sugamon. For dinner we went to the world's largest conveyor belt sushi restaurant, which is Kura Sushi at the Sky Tree. I think conveyor belt sushi is a good option for your arrival day because it's easy, low pressure, and you can eat as much or as little as you feel like. The next morning, we made the most of our jet lag to get up early-ish to go for breakfast/lunch at Tsukiji Market. It's become a really popular place to go, so these days it's always really crowded. From there, we walked across the river to Team Lab Planets and picked up our tickets for later. If you're there at a busier time of year, you might need to buy them in advance, but the big advantage of the off-season is you can be a bit more flexible and you don't need to have advanced bookings for everything. Then we walked over to Small Worlds Tokyo, which is all indoors, so it's a really good rainy day thing to do. We were really lucky there weren't any rainy days on the forecast, so I didn't need to save it for later. It was really fun taking pictures of all the miniature scenes, and if you like Evangelion or Sailor Moon, there are scenes of them too. Then we went back to Team Lab Planets, which I loved, even though I've been to other Team Lab places before. I've got a blog post comparing Team Lab Borderless with Team Lab Planets to help you decide which one to go to. Planets is getting a big big expansion in spring 2025, and after that I'd probably say Planets is the best one to go to because it's got more unique and unusual rooms, it's more fun and more physical. On day 3 we went to Shibuya Sky. There are quite a few observation decks in Tokyo and I'd really recommend going to whichever one appeals to you most. There's nothing like the view of Tokyo that stretches on as far as you can see in every direction. Shibuya Sky is the newest observation deck in Tokyo. I really liked it. It has a really clear view all the way around and it feels really modern and spacious. We picked up tickets for an hour or so later and then just killed some time around Shibuya. Again, that's another advantage of the off-season that we were able to do that. If you're there at a busier time, you might need to book in advance. And if you want to go at sunset, that's the most popular time that always sells out first. In the afternoon, we went on to Akihabara, which is another place I can go back to again and again. If you really like anime, you can easily spend a whole day there and you'll probably want to go back. If you're less interested, half a day or a couple of hours would be enough. On day 4, we spent the whole day in Harajuku, which is another must visit place I always go back to every time. These days it is very crowded, so go on a weekday if you can. The main street, Takeshita Street, is always very busy, but the back streets are quieter. Now, so far on the trip we've been quite tired in the evenings, so we didn't really stay out that late, but today we had more energy, so we went for a roam around Shinjuku and the arcades, which is always a good thing to do in the evenings. They're always open late. Shinjuku at night is so full of bright lights with so much going on. It's a really exciting place. On this trip, I kind of miss staying there. It always feels like Shinjuku's my home in Tokyo. I think when you stay there, you get used to what it's like there, but if you just visit, you realise how hectic it is. On day 5, we went over to Ikebukuro to check out all the new stuff there, and there is a lot of new stuff since before 2020, especially for anime fans. It feels like an up-and-coming place as a sort of rival for Akihabara, but it still doesn't have quite the same vibe. There's the world's largest gachapon store, the Bandai Namco Cross store, which is huge, the world's largest anime store, some new arcades, so much. I did film a video that I never got around to editing, so most of those places aren't that new anymore, but they might be new to you like they were new to me, so let me know if you want to see it anyway. That morning we picked up a picnic from Tokyo Food Show, which is in the basement of Mark City in Shibuya, right by our hotel. They've got some great sushi bentos. I picked up some strawberries. They had lots of more expensive ones that I was really tempted to try, so maybe next time. We took our picnic along to Minami Ikebukuro Park, which was really nice. That morning I saw that Rainbow Holic shop had just opened, and since we were going to that area anyway, we had to go along. I don't know if you follow Rainbow Holic, but you definitely should. She posts so much cute stuff about Japan, souvenir stamps and journaling, and her shop has so much cute stationery. If you like cute things and stationery, I think her shop is even better than Itoya, the big stationery shop in Ginza, even though it's a lot smaller. I did buy quite a few things. It's in Jujo Ginza, which is right by Jujo Station, just a few stops along from Ikebukuro on the Saikyo line. It's really easy to get to. And if you're only staying in Tokyo and you want to experience a traditional Japanese covered shopping street, a shotengai, that's exactly what Jujo Ginza is. Day 6 is the day we move on to Nagoya. Before we did that, we did a mini half-day trip to Jindaiji or Chofu, which is less than half an hour away on the train. It's not a major day trip, but it has a different feel from central Tokyo. You can visit a lovely temple, there's a water wheel, old style streets and old restaurants. We were lucky there was a festival on, so there were so many street food stalls. I definitely recommend going to any festivals that are on during your trip, even if they're not major ones. There's always a really good atmosphere and lots of street food. If you want to know when festivals are, I've just opened pre-orders for my calendar, which has the dates of Japanese festivals in 2025. Last year, the calendar sold out at the start of December, so I would recommend pre-ordering if you want one. The link's in the description. So then we took the Shinkansen to Nagoya, which is quite a short journey. It's only an hour and a half. I can't believe we'd never stopped in Nagoya before. It's such an easy place to add to your plans because it's on the way between Tokyo and Kyoto and Osaka. We stayed at the Nagoya Asocia Marriott Hotel, which is right on Nagoya Station. It's a really comfortable, luxurious hotel with a stunning view of Nagoya. I love this view from the cocktail bar at the top with Nagoya Castle glowing in the dark. The main reason we were in Nagoya was to go to the railway museum because Japanese trains are amazing. It's called the SC Maglev and Railway Park. It's got a lot about the Shinkansen and the new Maglev line that's currently under construction that's even faster than the bullet train. I loved the museum. It was so interesting. And if you go, look out for me and Phil in the diorama. We live there now as tiny models next to the model of the museum. If you find us, send me a picture. We spent way longer than I expected at the museum because we enjoyed it so much. But I did make a video about what else there is to do in Nagoya. I'm sure lots of you will be there for the Studio Ghibli park. In the evening, we took the Shinkansen to Osaka, which takes about 50 minutes to an hour, and we checked into the Hotel Monterey Grasmere, which has an entire church next to the lobby. We had another great view from our room. If you want a hotel with a view, look out for ones that say City View on Expedia, or choose a hotel that starts on a high floor. This hotel was close to Dotonbori, which is a great place to stay. It feels like the centre of Osaka and it's so lively at night. We went along to Oko for okonomiyaki, which is a really good place for vegan and vegetarian options. Something I've noticed since before 2020 is that places that are popular on Happy Cow tend to have really long queues. I'd recommend going early if you can or avoiding regular meal times. We were there quite late, and even so the queue went all the way down the stairs. We ended up queuing for an hour and a half, which sounds crazy now, but it was one of those situations where you've queued for so long and you're committed and you have to stay there. But it was really good. They use different ingredients, so it's a bit different to your regular okonomiyaki, and it's run by just one amazing woman who is doing all the cooking, all the serving up, all the taking orders. I couldn't believe how hard she worked. The next day we had a roam around Osaka. We went through Dotonbori to Pink Kawaii Cafe, which is so pink and so kawaii, and actually wasn't busy at all. Then to Amemura, which is a more alternative area, to Phil's favourite pinball arcade, and then on to Shinsekai, which is a more retro area. The first time I went to Osaka, it really surprised me and I loved how fun and exciting it was. On this repeat visit, I didn't love it quite as much. That's definitely not the case for everyone. Maybe I was just in the mood for somewhere more relaxing, or maybe we should have done more new things. The next day, we went on a day trip to Kobe, which is so close to Osaka. It's only 15 minutes on the bullet train. The city has a really good feel to it. There's a ropeway right next to the Shinkansen station that takes you up a small mountain with great views and gardens. You can walk back down the mountain past a waterfall. I really enjoyed it. It felt like a mini adventure, but not too challenging. We went through Chinatown to the waterfront, which is really pretty at night. There's quite a few shops and restaurants there. We were looking for some Kobe beef. Now, I kind of messed this up because it seems that no Kobe beef restaurants have any vegetarian options. We were hoping for some sort of street food stall where you could try it, but that doesn't seem to exist. It seems to be just sit-down restaurants that you have to go into. In the end, we found somewhere that mainly served burgers. It was nice, but it wasn't the real deal. Japan really isn't a rip-off place in general, but when it comes to Kobe beef, I think you do really need to do your research to find somewhere genuine. And remember that Kobe beef isn't the only high-quality beef. There are all different types of A5 Wagyu from around Japan that are just as good, but just not as famous. We will be trying some in a minute later on in the trip. Next, we're going to an onsen town for a stay in a traditional Japanese hotel, a ryokan, which is a really popular thing to do. This was actually my first time, which I know might seem strange given how many times I've been to Japan, but I'm not a bath or spa sort of person, so it'd never really been top of my list, but I thought now was the time to give it a try. Kinosaki is such a gorgeous onsen town. I looked at a few others like Arima Onsen, which is closer to Osaka. It's quite near Kobe, but they seemed a bit concretey, and at those sorts of places you stay inside your ryokan ryokan once you've checked in. But in Kinosaki, the whole town is really picturesque, and they encourage you to go out and stroll around in your yukata. If you stay there, you get a pass to all 7 public bathhouses, as well as the baths at your ryokan. Sometimes when I recommend Kinosaki, I think some people are put off by the train ride, which is 2 3/4 hours from Osaka or Kyoto, which sounds quite long. However, it's scenic. You're going through the beautiful countryside. I spent the whole time just looking out the window. The train's really comfortable and it really didn't seem that long. After checking out of our ryokan, we went along to the seaside, which is only 12 minutes away at Takeno, and that was such an experience. I don't know if it was the time of year, but there was basically no one else there. We had the whole place to ourselves. We even got to see some farming fields, which were right by the station. I hadn't really seen anything like that in Japan before. This isn't your typical golden route. We're definitely off the beaten track. The downside of that is not many places were open. There were vending machines for drinks, but not really anywhere to eat. So we took the train back to Kinosaki and went to this cute cafe. I still dream of this toast set. Then we took the train to our final stop, Kyoto. The main story when it comes to Kyoto is how overcrowded it is. Everyone wants to go there, so the main places are always very busy. I wanted to make a video about what it's really like there, so we took a stroll through some popular places. We went across the river through Gion, the main geisha district, to Higashiyama and Kiyomizudera, which is the #1 most crowded part. What I hope I showed in the video is if you go to somewhere on the top 10 list of things to do in Kyoto, it will be crowded. These are the places where everyone goes. But between them, if you have a wander, you don't even need to go very far and you can find much quieter, calmer streets. Most people don't explore very far beyond the main attractions. There are hundreds of temples and shrines and historic streets where you can have a much calmer experience. Not everywhere is crowded in the whole city, just the few popular, famous places. For example, we went up to this park, which is where the river divides, where there are turtle stepping stones. It was so lovely and relaxing. And if you really want to avoid the crowds, there are hundreds of other historic places all around Japan that fewer people visit. They might not be as famous and they might not have as many places to go as Kyoto, which is popular because it has such a high concentration of these beautiful historic places, but you'll have a much calmer experience and it might just be more enjoyable. The hotel we stayed in was the Mitsui Garden Kyoto Kawaramachi Jokyoji. It's on the grounds of a small temple, which is pretty unique. The rooms are small, but I think it's quite stylish and the location is good. Before, I've stayed closer to Kyoto Station, which is great for day trips, but staying here felt more like we were in Kyoto. I enjoyed Kyoto a lot more on this repeat visit. I've never fallen in love with Kyoto like a lot of people do. The whole city isn't historic, but there are pockets that are really beautiful. And the route we took this time was like wandering through a dream of historic Japan. Now, Arashiyama is a really popular place to go. It's on the edge of Kyoto, 20 minutes by train from Kyoto Station. I have been there before, but there's quite a lot to do and we did different things this time. We took the Sagano Romantic train, which is a really popular sightseeing train. But what I enjoyed even more was the Hozugawa river cruise that we took on the way back. It's mostly a relaxing boat ride along the river, but there are a few parts with white water. It's quite gentle, but it adds a little bit of excitement. And I felt like you could appreciate the scenery more from the boat than on the train. We saw quite a lot of wildlife. You don't always see that much in Japan. We saw birds, turtles, monkeys, and even a beaver, which was exciting for me because I've never seen one in the wild before. That evening was the best meal of the trip at Teppan Tavern Tenamonia, a small teppanyaki place run by a really friendly couple. Finally, they had A5 Wagyu beef and vegetarian options, which is really rare. Again, everywhere in Kyoto with vegetarian options had really long queues. They're used to foreigners and spoke excellent English, so it was really easy and it felt really authentic. It's reservation only. You do need to book as soon as your date becomes available. On to the last full day of the trip. I should mention that by the time we got to Kyoto, I was feeling quite exhausted. You walk so much in Japan, so if you're not used to being on your feet all day, It's a lot. So just bear that in mind when you're planning. I know you want to do everything, but you need to still make sure you'll enjoy it. So on this day, we went to Uji, which is about half an hour from Kyoto Station. You can see Byodo-in, the beautiful temple from the 10 yen coin. It felt a bit like Kinkakuji. There's not a whole lot to do there, just the stunning view of the beautiful temple to enjoy. Uji's known for green tea, so there are so many matcha flavoured snacks. If you like green tea, you'll love it there. Now this isn't in my video, but Phil's knee gave up on the way back to the station, which was almost exactly the point where we'd walked 100 miles on the trip. So we picked up a knee support from the pharmacy and made it onto the train with the suitcases to take the Shinkansen back to Tokyo. Our flight home was in the morning, so we stayed the last night in Tokyo to be closer to the airport. But it wasn't quite the party night we'd expected it to be. We stayed at the Sequence Hotel in Miyashita Park in Shibuya. It's a shopping mall that has a rooftop park. Again, the hotel starts on a high floor, so it has views. We got a park view room and the view was stunning. I loved that you could see the trains going into Shibuya Station. The basic rooms at this hotel are very small, so I would recommend upgrading. It's a very trendy feeling hotel. There were so many people in the cafe bar in the lobby and in the park, even in the evening. So that will either be your thing or it won't. We needed to get dinner and it was quite late on a Saturday evening and everywhere was busy. We thought we'd just go along to Kura Sushi, but it was full up and they turned us away. That's another thing. Since 2020, conveyor belt sushi places always seem to be really busy. You almost always have to wait to get a seat, unless you go to a much quieter area or eat early. So we went over to Harajuku because I wanted to go to Kura Sushi Royal, which is one of their flagship stores, but that was also full up. Phil was having trouble walking around with his bad knee, and then I hit my head going to check another restaurant, which also turned out to be closed. It was one of those nights. In the end, we got into Torikazoku, an izakaya chain where everything's 378 yen, including the drinks. It's quite a relaxed place where you feel like you can hang out for a bit longer, which is unusual in Japan. I think it's more fun to go there as a group, but we had food and that was the main thing. So that was our 2-week golden route-ish trip with the hits and the misses. There weren't any real misses. I'm glad we added in Nagoya and Kinosaki. And if it's your second or third or fourth trip to Japan, for me it's always the new places that are the highlights. Tell me what you thought in the comments, and I'll be back next week on Thursday with more videos about Japan. Bye bye!